Viewers, Bribda Dirja Pratama, a member of the South Sulawesi Police, was killed by his senior. The victim's father, who is also an active police officer, found several bruises on his child's body. Police have now named one suspect and are investigating the involvement of 5 other personnel.
Bribda Dirja Pratama, a member of the South Sulawesi Police Sabara Directorate, was killed by his senior. Bribda Dirja, who has just graduated in 2025, was persecuted in the police dormitory at South Sulawesi Police Headquarters on Jalan Perintis Kemerdekaan, Makassar. The victim's family did not know that Bribda Dirja was a victim of persecution in the police dormitory. Last Sunday morning, the victim was still communicating with his family. The family then received news that Brigadier DP had died. The victim's father, also an active police officer, noticed something strange, namely blood coming from the deceased's mouth and a number of bruises on his son's body. Since we saw the video, there are bruises on the right side of the abdomen and on the neck.
So does it indicate strong violence?
Yes, indicated because it is still inside. And there is a video of the bruises on the right side of the stomach.
What kind of initial information did you receive from the family?
Well, he never complained of pain. He contacted his mother at dawn. When she replied to his chat, there was no response. The victim mother became hysterical in front of South Sulawesi police chief who had met with the family of Bribda Dirja Pratama. The victim's body was taken to the public cemetery under police escort. The family and relatives were powerless to resist during the funeral process of police officer Dirja Pratama at the Banjarapingrat Public Cemetery in South Sulawesi. The victim's mother even fainted and had to be evacuated.
The statement of one of the suspects regarding P is consistent with the result of the medical examination, but the blows to the head and other parts of the body are consistent. Therefore, we can conclude that P is the perpetrator, and we will proceed with further investigation.
The police have now named one suspect. They are still questioning 5 other members. This case also adds to the long list of allegations of violence within the police force. TV1 reports.
Bribda Dirja was killed after being assaulted by his senior at the Deep Samapta dormitory of the South Sulawesi Regional Police Headquarters. One suspect has been named. Meanwhile, the police are still investigating the involvement of 5 other seniors. So why does bullying within law enforcement institutions occur so often? To discuss this issue, we are joined by the expert advisor to the National Police Chief, retired Commissioner General Ito Sumardi. Good afternoon, Mr. Ito.
Good afternoon, Mr. Aditya.
All right, Mr. Ito. This assault was committed by a police officer. How could such a case occur within a police dormitory, sir?
Yes, I have coordinated with the South Sulawesi Police Chief, Mr. Irjan Johanidi. He said that the cause of this accident is currently being investigated. Initially, it was reported that the deceased was ill. However, after the autopsy results were found, there were indications of abuse. Then, after an investigation was conducted, a suspect was found to be a friend. This is indeed a culture that still exists among us, the chief of police, in intensifying internal reforms. So I think cases such as those in Maluku and now internally are certainly being investigated by the provincial police chief to find out why this happened, how it happened, and of course, efforts will be made to prevent it from happening again. This is also an example of what should not happen elsewhere. It was usually like that when I graduated from the academy. There was a tradition that really had to be eliminated. How was the tradition of a junior usually carried out? It was like being bullied by the seniors. Yes, sometimes there were resistance and so on. But what is being investigated thoroughly is whether the perpetrator was just one person, or are there 5 more people who are currently under investigation who were involved or perhaps protecting them? because this happened at the dormitory at the South Sulawesi Regional Police Headquarters. So I think this is something that needs to be investigated further. And I'm sure it has been investigated by our friends at the South Sulawesi Regional Police Headquarters, who sent the last message, which seemed like it was the final message. Well, this will be further investigated via WhatsApp, including when it was sent and the time of death of the victim based on the autopsy results. So later, we will be able to see whether the deceased sent the message after his death or before his death. Well, I think several things will be the focus on the investigation by Propam rather than the head of Propam from the South Sulawesi Regional Police, which is currently being carried out. That's it, Mr. Aditya. That's the preliminary information.
Okay, sir. You mentioned earlier that when you graduated from the police academy or the non-commissioned officer candidate school, for example, does such action have become a tradition or culture? Actually, when exactly do you mean by culture and tradition, sir?
Well, between senior and juniors, we were still in the Indonesian Armed Forces and I was in the military academy. It was very common to provide motivation so that there would be courage and other things. There may also be disciplinary measures, but these are not included in the SOP. And actually, according to the regulation, it is prohibited. But as I said earlier, there is a tradition in educational institution to encourage the student to be brave, disciplined, and so on. However, there are no standard in education. It is just a tradition. The same thing happens when students graduation, Mas Aditya. It's usually juniors are pranked by their seniors. Well, sometimes it's too much. There are many other things that will certainly have to be revealed through the investigation of the perpetrator as well as the perpetrator who is suspected of enrichment and what his motive was. We ourselves know, especially since they are fellow police officer and has son of a police officer. I think this is something that shall not happen again and must be completely eliminated. In the current process of reforming the national police, what has been discussed by the National Police Chiefs Expert Advisory Team together with the National Police International Reform Team is actually included in the points. We must not commit abuse either externally or internally. But I think it's difficult, Mas Aditya, if within a unit that happens to be they both come from the same police force or military unit, for example, and this is still happens a lot. Well, this is certainly should not happen. What needs to be explored is what the motivation is. What the motive is. Well, just have to wait for the result of the investigation, sir.
Okay, I think the tradition of seniority to shape the spirit or mentality probably occurs in almost all institutions, but when it leads to death, that is ultimately regrettable.
Yes, that's right. That's what happened. We ourselves have experienced this several times. It's been a long time going in the place of educational institution. Both non-commissioned and officers are the same as it happened, and this should not be continued because this tradition is actually very uneducational, in my opinion, and my resulting in fatalism. Yeah, there may even be some who don't dare to report. Yeah, if it is in education, for example, but then he keeps it. Finally, he committed suicide, for example. That's one example of several cases. Well, for this case, the BBDA DP is only going to graduate in 2025. It's a normal if the new child is a junior, then the same senior may be work, but too much can be done. We often see it on television or in television media. How to be treated from senior to junior. So, will this be allowed? Of course not, because it's one of the items of the reform, the National Police, which has been compiled by the current internal reform team of the National Police. It's really prohibited. It is prohibited and the consequences are severe. So, I guess later, the perpetrator must also be prepared to face serious consequences in addition to the assault and criminal charges that may be brought against him. This police officer is a civil servant. We are just waiting at the moment. Provincial police chief has been very transparent. He has visited the victim's family because coincidentally, the victim's father is also a member of the Indonesian National Police, and the regional police chief has promised that this case will be investigated transparently and of course will be made public so that this does not happen elsewhere. That's right, sir.
Well, what is also noteworthy is that the victim's father is also a member of the Indonesian National Police. This means that this child has a greater opportunity to tell his father, who is also a police officer, when he is being abused. What if this happened to someone who didn't have any backing or family who were also police officers? Well, it depends, sir. In my experience, usually if it's not too serious, it's not something that usually happens. In military and police circles, they usually don't want to report it to their parents, but when something has already happened and is too late, some people report it, but others keep it to themselves until someone gets hurt. Yes, we've seen several similar cases in the military recently, and this is the same case, sir. So I think the extradition between juniors and seniors must be completely abolished, eliminated. Perhaps in another way, maybe by providing physical training instead of physical punishment, beaten or tortured, but it could be given as a kind of motivation. This may also be homework for us, from the advisor to the national police chief, to raise this case and formulate what steps can be taken to eliminate this very risky and very bad tradition. Okay, so based on the information from the police investigator, they are also looking into the involvement of 5 other members, right, sir? That means that when we talk about a boss, it's not one-on-one. If it's on one-on-one, it's a fight. Well, there are 5 members involved in this case, which is also being investigated. What do you think, sir? That's right. Yes, that usually my experience. But what I've experienced and what several other people have experienced. What we might see in some cases is that abuse is usually committed, for example, by one junior member and then several senior members bully him. Yes, bullying in the military and police force is not like ordinary bullying. They use physical methods without realizing that the victim most likely also has health problems. Is it possible that sometimes that hits areas that are very dangerous, such as the stomach, the chest, and sometimes the head? When they are committing abuse, they don't think about the consequences. And sometimes, a junior also just stays silent because it is considered a tradition until things happen that can cause injuries or serious injuries or even death. Well, this happens. Well, of course, this is the function of supervision is that there is a platoon commander and then there are his colleagues who are investigating whether there was only one perpetrator. Or together or protecting each other like that. Well, here's something interesting that we may have already mentioned. From the WhatsApp message sent by the deceased to his parents asking them to cook the duck. Of course, we also need to determine whether the WhatsApp message was sent after the victim's death or not. If it was sent after the victim's death, then it is clear that there was an attempt to cover up the crime, which is a violation of the code of ethics and a more serious criminal offense. Then, if it was sent before the victim's death, we also need to look at the time, as the time of death can be determined from the bruises on the body rather than the wounds and other findings from the autopsy. So we should wait for Mr. Adi to provide more technical details from the South Sulawesi Regional Police. Earlier, the police chief said that in addition to expressing his condolences, he would promise to uncover this case if it would certainly be input for the National Police Headquarters to take steps to prevent similar cases from happening again, both within the police force and outside it. This is good for maintaining independence and objectivity because the perpetrator is also a police officer, What do you think, Pakito? Yes, certainly from the National Police Headquarters, there is a division in Propam, right? The head of Propam then has Paminal and will definitely come down. Will come down and will back up the South Sulawesi Regional Police. Because with the arrival of the National Police Headquarters, there is an element of objectivity and independence. This will be more accountable. Okay, I think this happened at the Pinrang police station. The provincial police have now taken over, and of course, the national police headquarters will send a team to assist in uncovering this case objectively, clearly, and transparently, and at the same time to make a record for the national police headquarters. Let's make sure this case doesn't happen again, especially regarding the perpetrator's modus operandi. Why did they do it that way? It could happen. How could it happen? Where is the supervisory role of the leadership, namely the commander? And what factors caused the abuse? Was it just tradition or were there other things? Yes, this is certainly being investigated at the moment. Mr. Aditya, yes, it is being investigated. Okay, thank you, Expert Advisor Kapor, retired Police Commissioner Ito Sumardi, for sharing this information with us. We are still waiting to see how the illegal proceedings against one police officer will unfold, as well as the investigation of 5 other police officers. Thank you once again, and we wish you good health and continued success.